Okay, so now we're going to use trig to find the angles of a triangle. So here I have triangle ABC, and they gave me two sides, and I know that this is a right angle. And let's say, for example, that they want me to find the measure of angle A. That means that angle A is going to be my focus. Angle A is going to determine how I label my triangle. And depending how I label my triangle is going to depend which one of the three trig functions I use in SO, CA, or TOA. Am I going to use the sine function, the cosine function, or the tangent function? Okay? So they want me to find the measure of angle A, right? So I'm going to use angle A to label my triangle. When I do that, it's going to look like this. Okay? So there is angle A. So obviously that's going to be my opposite side. This is going to be my hypotenuse, and then this is my adjacent side. So now let's take a look here. I labeled my triangle, and what two sides did they give me? I don't know what the hypotenuse is. With angle A, I know that this is the opposite side, and they gave me that. That's 5. And I know that this is the adjacent side, which is 12. So when you look here, you have an O and you have an A. Which of the three trig functions has an O and an A in SOHCAHTOA? Well, I hope that you noticed that the tangent function has the O and the A. So since they gave us the O and the A, we're going to use the tangent function. And the tangent function is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. It's going to be 5 over 12. So I'm going to say that the tangent of angle A, the tangent of angle A is equal to 5 over 12. And when I go into my calculator and I do 5 over 12, that's going to give me 0.4164. So I have my calculator here. I take 5, I divide it by 12, and that gives me 0.416 repeating. Whoops. Let me do that. Let me show that again. 5 divided by 12. I get 0.416 repeating. I want to go to 4 decimal places. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next one is a 6, so this becomes a 7. So all I've done so far is figure out the trigonometric ratio, right? Well, now you're wondering, okay, so fine, I got a decimal. What does that decimal mean? Well, remember that this ratio is a relationship of the sides of the triangle. If you actually go in reverse and use the inverse function, if you look here at your calculator, if you look at the sine, cosine, and tangent, above it you're going to see sine -1, cosine -1, and tangent -1 in yellow letters here. That's the inverse function. That's the inverse function of those three trig functions. So what I'm going to do here is I want to access those inverse functions. So in my calculator, I'm going to hit the shift button. So shift, it activated the inverse function, and now I'm going to hit the tangent button again. And what that gives me is 22.61. Right? What that gives me is 22.61. What that means then is that the inverse function, tangent to the -1 of 0.4167 is 22.62, which means that the measure of angle A is 22.62 degrees. And that is how we can use trig to find the angles of a triangle. You look to see, you label your, you see what angle they want you to find. That angle determines how you label the triangle. The two sides that you have when you're looking for the angle tells you which trig function you're going to use. It's going to give you ultimately a decimal, and then to find the angle, you're going to have to use the inverse function. You're going to have to access that tangent -1 function. And the way you do that is by hitting the shift button and then a tangent. Let's take a look at another example. Here I have another triangle, and it's triangle ABC, and they want me to find the measure of angle A. Okay, trying to find the measure of angle A. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to let angle A determine how I label my triangle. When I do that, well, here's my angle A, so that's the opposite side. This is obviously the hypotenuse, is across from the 90-degree angle, and this is my adjacent side. So now let's take a look here. What did they give me? Well, I have the opposite side and I have the hypotenuse. Well, if I have the opposite side and I have the hypotenuse, well, which of the three trig functions has an O and an H? Well, I hope that you notice that the sine function has an O and an H. The sine function has the O and the H, which means that I'm going to be using the sine function. So the sine of angle A, because that's what I'm looking for, they want me to find angle A, so the sine of angle A is equal to the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So the sine of A is going to be equal to opposite of 5 over the hypotenuse of 13. And I wrote that here. So the sine of A is equal to 5 over 13. I plug this into my calculator. I'll give you a second to do that. And that's going to give you 0.3846. So the sine of A is equal to 0.3846. Now, remember, I want to find the angle, right? So if I want to find the angle, I'm going to have to use the inverse function. So let's go here. So here is 5 divided by 13. I get a decimal. It's 0.3846. This is a 1, so this stays a 6. So I went to the 4 decimal places. But I want to find the angle, which means I'm going to have to use the inverse function. I got to do the inverse sign of this decimal to find the angle. So notice I'm going to hit my shift button here to activate it, and now I'm going to hit my sign button here, and that's going to give me 22.61 again. So if you look here, here's my triangle. I labeled it. I put in my trig function. I got a different decimal here. When I hit the inverse function, I got 22.62. So the measure of angle A is 22.62. Let's take a look here at another triangle. Again, here I have another triangle. It's called triangle ABC. This time they gave me these two sides here, and they want me to find the measure of angle A again. Okay, I'm going to find the measure of angle A. So what should I do? I should label my triangle dependent upon angle A here. So when I do that, it's going to look something like this. Here's my angle A. There's my opposite side. This is the hypotenuse, and this is my adjacent side. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. So let's take a look here. What two sides have they given me? Well, they have given me the hypotenuse, and they have given me the adjacent side. They've given me the hypotenuse and the adjacent side. So which one of my three trig functions has an A and an H in SOHCAHTOA? Well, I hope you noticed that it's the cosine function that has the A and the H. So A and H is going to be the cosine function. So the cosine of angle A is equal to the adjacent side over the hypotenuse, adjacent of 12 over 13. So right here I have the cosine of A is equal to the adjacent of 12 over 13. When I type that into my calculator, I get 0.9231 because 12 divided by 13 is 0.9231. But now I want to find the angle, which means I'm going to have to use the what? I'm going to have to use the inverse function. So the inverse function of 0.9231 is going to give me the angle. So when I go into my calculator here, and I put in 0.9231, and I hit the shift button, and I'm using the inverse of the cosine function, so I hit the shift button, and now I'm going to hit the cosine. What do I get? I get 22.61. This is a 6, so this becomes a 2. So what I get here is 22.62. Now you might be asking yourself, well, why did I get 22.62 for angle A all the time? The reason was because these are all the same triangle. If you take the Pythagorean theorem and you look here, if this is 5 and 12 and you do the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared, this is going to be 13. You know, if you do 5 squared plus 12 squared, you're going to get 13 squared. And the Pythagorean theorem, this is going to be 13. All I did was that I took out little bits at a time and gave you two sides, and no matter what we did, the measure of angle A came out to be what? 22.62, because these are all the same triangle. And it makes sense because if does the measure of an angle change only because because I took out one side or something? No, it doesn't. It still stays the same. So it proves to you more than anything